Hey moms, it's Laura Ollinger. Welcome to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Hello, welcome everyone today to this episode of the Positively Healthy Mom podcast. Today I have Anastasia Arauz. I'm so excited to introduce you all to her. She has a wealth of knowledge. She's been in the parent coaching business and therapy business for many, many years. And so, Anastasia, what can you tell us about your background just to set the stage for today?
Yeah, of course. So my background started as a elementary school teacher, and from there I was a school counselor, and then I owned my own private practice doing therapy, which led me to parent coaching, family coaching. So I've tied everything together at this point.
I love that. Yeah, it's kind of like you cover the gamut. You've seen it from all sides, and you're a mom yourself, so you get to see it from that angle as well. So, as far as addressing the moms and how we can help them today, I know that you're really passionate about helping moms understand what their family system is and kind of get a kind of a definition, working definition for that. And then maybe as a coach, from the mindset of a coach, figuring out where they are now and where they would like to go and how to close that gap. So, how do you really address the family systems?
Yeah, of course. So there is family systems theory. So I've kind of taken some of it from that, but this is really my own take on family systems theory. So I look at families as a system, as a whole compartment of many different things. And so each of us play a role in this system. And so if one part of the system is not working properly or having some struggles or issues, it's going to throw the whole system off. And it's going to be a really stressful, chaotic environment until everybody gets just grounded and gets in a place where they feel like they are in the flow or they feel like they are not struggling as much. So I really try to help families and moms just help them see where the breakdown is, where the struggle is, and what's happening to create that flow in the home.
Yes, I think that's so important. I'm not sure that moms, we're all so busy, we're running around in our daily lives. We don't often take time to like step back, get this bird's eye view and kind of analyze our own family system. So when you do see a breakdown, and assuming you're working with the mom, I know in the past you did work directly with the kids. How do you then address that to help them kind of shore up that, kink in the system?
Definitely. Yeah. So I initially it's usually with the mom, and then I try to bring, if there's a partner, I try to bring the partner in. So we're working together to understand what they value in their family, what they want their week to look like, their day to look like. So we really focus on what everybody's doing and how much time things take up. And really, the first thing I usually work on with people is just like a schedule and just kind of understanding where everybody is. And then from there, I can see where the breakdown is with each person, if people are doing too much, if someone's having things happen at school. So we really get into conversations about each individual person in the family and how they are doing. And then from there, we're able to start figuring out where to focus.
I love that. That's great. And so what happens because as you described this, I immediately am going through my Rolodex of like clients, friends, kind of thinking, what would they say about this?
Yeah.
And times, and I find this in my own practice, that parents come to me and they see a problem with their teenager, and I'm putting words in their mouth, but they're saying, fix my child. Right. And I'm sure you've seen that as well. And so how do you really help the parent see that they have a very large role in that situation?
Yeah, of course. That's really hard, right? Because I see that all the time. That's a lot of why I changed what I do, because when I was working with the kids, it wasn't getting to the root of the problem. So when I'm working with the families, I really try to establish a lot of connection with the parents to kind of just start going backwards a little bit. I mean, I don't get real deep into like, well, I do sometimes actually, that's not even true. Just going backwards of like the birth story, what happened in the toddler years. We have a lot of conversations of how it ended up at this point. And then we do a lot of the why, a lot of curiosity of why things are happening. And we just break that down, even to the point we'll get into the parents will start talking about how they were raised and how the things that went on with them and how they're bringing that in. And so just a lot of talking and communicating about just from the birth to where we're at right now. So then they can start seeing and the wheels start turning like, oh, there's been a problem. I just didn't catch it back then. So that problem just keeps getting larger and larger.
Yeah. And then helping parents seeing not just that they have had a role in that, but also that they have the ability to kind of troubleshoot and problem solve themselves with the assistance of you or maybe someone like me, some type of outside third party, unbiased professional who's just there to help. Because I do see a lot of parents still, even if they get the, like, I kind of do that a little bit too, like get the backstory. And I often see them kind of like blaming it on their child's personality type. Well, she's so stubborn or he's really this way, right? And so sometimes it is trouble for them to like make that connection. And so I think I'm really interested in, maybe you have a story you could share about a client, obviously, you know,
Mhm.
following that confidentiality that we all follow, but that someone that maybe made that transformation that was having a hard time seeing their role in this family system, and then having that parent developing that self-awareness and that kind of like aha, I'm sure is incredibly rewarding. I don't know if anybody comes to mind off the top of your head or if it's just kind of like a general blanket statement you could make.
Yeah, definitely. Like a few families come to my mind. I tend to, whatever reason, I have met a lot of families that have children on the spectrum.
Mhm.
And so those children, they're challenging at times. And so I'm thinking of one family where it was really hard for them to accept that child was on the spectrum and that they needed to be parented differently than the other children in the home and that it just looked different. And having them understand that when they, as the parent, rush them or don't or blame right away or trigger them, it's going to look different than with a typically developing child. So having them see the aha of like, I actually am creating some of this chaos and struggle with this child because they need parented a little bit differently. And I really try to have no judgment. And I don't think anyone's ever doing anything wrong or on purpose. It's just seeing things differently and having someone like you or me come in and just give a different objective, give a different viewpoint of what's going on.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, it's never about, the
Yeah.
judgment. We can't help them if we're in a state of judgment, but it's really just being about this kind of unbiased, neutral third party who's really just there to help and be a mirror to them so they can maybe see some of those patterns that they are, involved in. So the next kind of part of this conversation I want to go to is about that daily stress and kind of like those daily struggles that we all deal with, and we're all we all have our triggers, especially as parents, when our kids keep doing the same thing over and over again, or whatever it is that there is their, strength. All the kids have their strengths and they all have their weaknesses. I'll give an example.
Yeah.
In my own family, I've got 4 children and all teenagers, and right now 2 of them are in braces, but they're wearing those Invisalign tray things.
Okay.
Well,
So,
my younger child, youngest actually, who's 11, wears them flawlessly. She never loses them. She switches them every Sunday, exactly how she's supposed to do it. My 13-year-old, he keeps losing them. The dog keeps eating them. It's a disaster, right?
yeah.
And so it's like I feel myself like in my own triggers, like getting annoyed. Oh my God, now I have to take him to another appointment. Now, why
Yeah.
can't he be organized like his sister? All those things. And I'm like, I'm being my own client, right? So
Right.
sometimes
Yeah.
even ourselves, we coach ourselves. So, what do you do with kind of like those daily stresses and kind of untangling those patterns?
Definitely. Yeah. I always try to help moms and dads see that they can't control everything and things
Yeah.
will happen during the day and it is going to be challenging. But if they have the time and space for themselves, if they're able to ground themselves, if they're not in a state of flight constantly, they
Mhm.
are going to be able to handle it better. And those triggers aren't going to be as triggering because I find so much of us are so busy, we're working so much. Everyone's just every minute of the day is so like rushed and planned that I really try to get parents and folks to see to what can they take off there, what can stop, what kind of things can you take off your plate a little bit to where you do have those moments in time where you can address things like this. Because yeah, you're going to have to go to the dentist again, you're going to have to um, make the appointment, which takes time because you've got a call, and so all of those things are going to take time. And if you're already working 8 to 5, your husband or wife's working 8 to 5, it's really hard to get those things done. And so really helping people see that it's not just the day and the things that are happening right in the moment. You have all these extra things that can happen. And so giving yourself that padding, I guess you could say, to allow those things to be able to happen without being so stressed out.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think that's also going in the direction I'm interested if we could create an image or paint a painting for people on like an unhealthy family system or a really kind of destructive dynamic family system versus like a healthy one. And what does that look like?
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, I can see it in my mind too. And it's basically not a lot of rushing, lots of time where people are able to be relaxed. There's not screaming, there's not yelling, there's talking to each other, there's communicating. The phones are put away. Not everyone's on their devices all the time. People are following directions. And you are going to have all these moments where there are going to be the struggles with the boundaries, but you have to have that time and space and the ability to be able to parent. And if you're exhausted and you're tired, you're going to be snapping and you're going to be yelling because it's just too much. I think we all just do too much. And so that's a big thing I really talk with families is trying to help them see and figure out ways that they're not doing so much so they are able to handle little things that are triggering or just extra stuff that comes up. That makes sense.
Absolutely, it totally does. And sometimes I've given parent workshops and I had a mom stand up and she said, well, this all sounds great.
Yeah.
And she goes, I have no way of implementing this advice because I think she was a teacher and she said she works with teenagers all day. She's exhausted. She gets home. She's got her own teenagers. She's got the typical family grind of dinner and homework and all that stuff. And she's like, I just start yelling. She's like, everybody's yelling and I said, well, what could you do? I know you don't have, can't take the afternoon off, but could you take 5 minutes in the car before you walk in the door? Could you take 10 minutes? Could you do some of the breathe? I just taught them some emotional regulation exercises. Could you do that? Even if you could just, like you said, center yourself, ground yourself, so that way you are becoming the person that you need to become to handle the challenges that you have for that rest of that evening, right? So like that's kind of the stuff that I work on clients with. How does that resonate with you?
Oh, I feel the same way because I think there's so much pressure put on us as parents if we are working all day that we don't have the ability to come home and be rational sometimes. Because I mean, I work and the way I've formulated my life and my schedule is I've tried to make it a way where I don't snap and I'm not triggered because I can make my own schedule. And I used to have my own private practice, but I honestly closed it so I would have more flexibility. And
Mhm.
I think people can have mixed more flexibility in their jobs, but I think we're just so set sometimes that it's really starting to brainstorm ways of how to have that flexibility as parents with careers, with jobs, to where maybe you're going in later, the partner, if you're having a partner, I mean, if you're single, it looks different, but
Right.
trying to figure out ways to have the time to parent the kids because the kids need our time and they need our focus and they need our attention and they need us not to be in that fight flight, and we are all living on this roller coaster constantly. And it's just that's been my like passion, is just really helping families see we don't have to live like that. We don't have to live on this roller coaster constantly, and we're just also used to it, that it just seems normal.
Right, right. And one of the other things, I'd love to pick your brain on this. So one of the other things I teach a lot of my clients and I teach in workshops is parenting styles. Um,
Hmm.
and so I kind of help people assess, where they are now. Are they a helicopter parent? Are they a dismissive
Hmm.
parent? Are they, authoritarian parent? Or kind of like the goal would be to get to the authoritative, the equal between kind of boundaries and warmth and nurturance. And, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you see with your clients and their challenges within parenting styles?
Yeah, I see it all over the board. I actually talked to a mom the other day where she feels like she's too strict on her kids and she wants to let up a bit because she feels like she is causing them so much stress. But then I'll have another parent that they're just like very free with their boundaries. So I do think there can be a balance. And I
Yeah.
think we can mix it. And I do think that kids are it's easier to repair with them. And if
Mhm.
you are not doing a perfect job, it's okay. Just apologize to your child, and every day is a new day. And so that's the
Mhm.
other thing I really stress, is every day is a new day and every week is a new week. And you just keep plugging along, hopefully just one incremental little better step every day, just getting a little bit more calm every single day.
Totally, totally. And as you described, these stressed out parents, the ones that my brain kind of instantly, well, they're all stressed out, but the one that my brain went to was that dismissive parent or the avoidant parent, because they're having a hard time kind of co-regulating or emotionally regulating their child. And they kind of see their child almost as an annoyance or a nuisance because they're so busy, whatever they're doing. It could be career, it could be they're just, love to party, maybe they love to do whatever it is that's not engaging emotionally with their child. And that's where I see like a lot of breakdowns in that family system, where it's just this vicious cycle of, the child needs the parent's annoyed, so they pushes the child away, but that makes the child need the parent even more. And then that's where a lot of yelling comes in. So that was just kind of like my light bulb moment. Did you have any light bulb moments as we were talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I see that all the time. And it's funny because I know you work with teens. And one of the things that I think is a myth is that teens don't need us as much. And
Mhm.
that parents go back to work because I think our teens need just as much as our toddlers and our
Mhm.
elementary kids. And so I agree with you. It's like they need our time, they need our eye contact, they need us to be very present. And I think people just don't understand, or they forget what it was like when they were that age. And so I really try to help people remember, like, what was it like with your family when you were in high school? What did it look like? What were the boundaries or the things you all had in place at home that
Mhm.
worked? And so, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great point, because I think that is, one of these myths about when a teenager does kind of need their parent, it looks different, it sounds different, it feels different than when their child was much younger. And that's when parents do start to get triggered. I mean, we get triggered when they're having their tantrum when they're two, but we also get triggered when they're teenagers and they're being sarcastic, or they're eye rolling, or they're slamming their door, or they're like, you're not fair, you're mean, or whatever, because we're holding a line or holding a boundary. And so just like bringing to parents awareness, I think, in this conversation, that to kind of like dig deeper behind the behavior and say, what's under that? Like, why is this happening right now? And so that they're like less triggered and they can get some space and say, really understand, like, okay, I think my teenager needs me to listen to them right now. Or I think, and then maybe ask them, like, a lot of times it's like, do you want my advice? Do you just want me to listen? Like, what are you needing from this? And just allow them to let them know. What do you think?
Oh, totally. I think that is great, being curious and
Mhm.
letting them asking the questions, not just assuming, giving them the space that they need. And I think too, we forget, and I forget this, that I've been in this field for so long, kids are developmentally are so different at each age. And I
Right.
just don't think a lot of times parents realize that or even cognitively think about it. So I really try to help people see, like, cognitively, like the different developmental levels, like you were saying. I think that's such a great point of the teenager needing you in such a different way, and what it looks like is different, and this is what it looks like, and this is pretty normal, and just explaining that to them, and then they're like, oh yeah, I guess that would be. So sometimes I think people don't even realize what it is supposed to look like, and then that triggers them.
Yeah, yeah. And how has your profession made you a better mom? You've got three, younger and some older ones. Tell us like what you've implemented in your own life because of what you do.
Oh yeah, of course. So I had children later in life. I have two stepchildren that my husband had before
Mhm.
we got married, and I was older. I was 40 when I met 37 when I met him. And so I didn't really have children in my life until that point. And so I
Mhm.
had a lot of training in schools before, and it's made me more present. I will tell you that it's made me much more present and aware of how fast it goes, how much they need, and how different they all can be. And just
Mhm.
to give them grace and give myself grace, because I still do a lot of the same things everybody else does. I will yell. I am not perfect. I say things sometimes, and I'm like, why would I say that? But I'm like, but I was a child, and so we have all those things in us that we repeat what our parents do. And
Yeah.
so a lot of it is just being very present and conscious of what I'm saying. So I try to be a very conscious parent, and just every day, just trying to do the best I can. But it is difficult. I have an 11-year-old like you, and right now that he's in that transition phase of that preteen, and that attitude starting, and it's me taking a step back, like, okay, I can handle this again, we can do this. But it's tough to watch them get older, and you parenting differently at times, and catching yourself and making sure you're doing the best you can.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I too kind of catch myself, or like something's about to come up, like, nope, like rewind. Or, flat out, sometimes my kids have, you know, politely shared maybe what I could have done instead. I was actually really impressed. So there's a story that I tell. Last year, my boys were both on a basketball team, and my son got the younger son got in the car and he said, "Oh my gosh, the ref was so unfair. He was calling it every foul on our team and not on the other team." And my kind of instinct was to be like, "Oh, buddy, you played great. You had the great free throw at the end." And my other son said, "Mom, that's not what he wants to hear."
Right.
I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. He doesn't want me to try to cheer him up or tell him how great he played. He wanted me to get in that feeling and empathize with him and feel like, oh my gosh, that ref
Yeah.
totally, or oh, yeah. Or even if I didn't agree with the ref, just say, or like with his assessment of the ref, I could have just been like, oh my gosh, that was so frustrating, or I know,
Yeah.
right? And so it's funny how just as I continue to do what I do, I try to, call myself or have my kids call me on, when I am like, oh, I could have done that better.
So good. And I think it's really cool that you were able to then not be offended that he said that to you. You didn't get mad because you're
Yeah.
the parent. You like
Yeah.
took what he said and were like, yeah, you're totally right. And so we do that here too. I do that all the time. Like, yeah, you're right. I need to take a step back. Or I'll mess up. Like my one son's really into video games. And so he has a time limit. We're pretty strict with it, but he can earn extra minutes by doing various things. And so I messed up his minutes one day and he got very mad. And so instead of me being like, no, I'm right. I know I'm right, we had
Yeah.
a nice discussion over the minutes. And so it's also, I think, when we were growing up, it was looked at as like this hierarchy, like I'm the parent, I'll tell you what to do. And I feel like now we're at a place where it's everyone respects each other. And it's
Yeah.
really looking at those kids. It's like they're humans just like us, and just respecting them and talking to them like you would talk to another person, not feeling like you have to be the one that's like talking down.
I love that. That's such a great thought. And my example, and then kind of you echoed that back, is when we mess up that we can make a mistake or admit a mistake. Like you're like, oh, I messed up the minutes on the, video game. And the other day I was texting my daughter and she was exhausted. She had worked like a double shift at her job, and she thought I was being mean and she kind of misinterpreted, but instead of like arguing back with her, well, I'm not being, I was
Yeah.
just like, me, I get it. And it's like, okay, well, let's just talk about this later. But I think like being able to lead by example with saying, hey, I messed up, or hey, I was wrong, or just, hey, I get that it's not a good time, is such an amazing model for the kids, because then they will be able to say, oh yeah, mom, I messed up. Or, later in life when they're with a partner, in a relationship or even a job, saying, oh yeah, I messed up. Just like that is one of the hardest things for humans to do, is to admit fault. And if you could just make it like a normal part of life and like it's no big deal, we all do it. It just, I feel like, is great training, creating great resilience for kids. So, okay, as we wrap up, I mean, we went through family systems. Is there anything we left out of that we should re bring back up?
No, I think it was good. I mean, unless you have any other questions about it, I mean, that's basically how I look at things. 'Cause sometimes I talk about it looking like a car as like my example. A car has four wheels, and if one of the wheels is flat, it's not going to run very well. So
Mhm.
I give that example a lot of times as like a healthy family system. If you have one child that's really struggling, it's going to throw the whole family off. Or if
Yeah.
your husband is really struggling or you're really struggling, it'll throw everybody off. So just kind of getting a handle on where everybody is important.
Okay, awesome. So I love that visual. That's great for people to remember. And then just kind of talking about daily life and daily stresses, and how even carving out whatever it is that we need to carve out to slow down so that we can be more present. I love what you brought up about being present and being very self-aware when you are interacting with your kids. And then last, we kind of just talked about, when we make mistakes, we own them, and we don't take offense. And my actually favorite part of what you said was just respecting your kids. So many of us, grew up in those old school families where that wasn't the way it was. And now things have kind of evolved. And really, the research shows that. If there's any parents who are listening to this and they're like, oh no, the old way is the good way, I just encourage you to do some research and look at parenting styles and look at, what research proves to have the most, resilient, thoughtful, empathetic, kind, responsible kids that we can create and help be a part of their lives. Okay, anything else before we wrap up?
No, that's it. I think that was great. Yeah, I think you summarized it really well.
Okay, cool. So where can people find you going forward?
Yeah, of course. So I hang out on Instagram mostly. So it's
Okay.
anastasia.arauz. And I think that's the best place. Everything is on there. You can find my website there. You can find my programming there. So yeah, check me out on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you, Anastasia, for taking the time. And well, I'm already following you, but hopefully everybody else will find you, follow you. And I look forward to bringing you back in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. It was really fun. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for listening to the Positively Healthy Mom podcast, because there's no manual for the hardest job in the world. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends.